Advocate of the High Court of Kenya, top lawyer, Deputy President candidate Safina Party, Willis Otieno. First of all, karibu sana. Thank you very much for inviting us to your space. This week has been a very busy week in the country. There's been so much happening. I don't know, what was the major highlight for you for this week, I think?
For me, the main highlight was two things. Kenyans standing out loudly to demand for the release of Boniface Mwangi and to call out the Tanzanian government for going contrary to the East Africa Community Treaty, which provides and allows for free movement of people, labor and services, goods. And the manner in which some Kenyans, prominent, eminent Kenyans and citizens were deported from Tanzania, and then the unfortunate abduction of Boniface Mwangi and being held in Communicado for 4 days. And Kenyans spoke out and they demanded for the release of their citizens. So it was a blight, in my view, in the standing of President Suluhu, because it showed that Tanzania is not committed to the ideals of the treaty, which they are signatory to. The other issue of major note this week was the launch of the unaffordable housing in Mukuru. That someone has put up 1,000 housing units in Nairobi that has a population of almost 4 million plus people. And you say this is a very major intervention by government. Private sector has put up here more than 200,000, in fact almost over 1 million housing units have been put up here by private sector. In private land, using private money. You've spent almost 5 billion to put up 1,000 units. You've taken taxpayers' money, you've built on public land, and you're selling it to the public. And you saw the next day after that was a demonstration in Mukuru, people refusing that they cannot be removed from where they stay. So that housing thing is all a PR exercise. And government cannot be the driver of those kind of interventions. It can only be the private sector. The other issue that was of concern was the arraignment of Natembeya. You know, Natembeya has been a thorn in the flesh of William Ruto. And it's not because he has done anything wrong, it's purely because he has stood with the people and he's been very vocal in advocating and championing for the issues that affect the common mwananchi in the entire country, not just in Western. And that definitely makes certain powers that be to be uncomfortable. Hence, their hard response on him to charge him for things that looks very fake charges. And even the high drama in which he was being arrested, arraigned in court. And you can see even violations of his rights in the process. But a significant portion of Kenyans stood with the governor. And at least the courts did not detain him for long, but they were able to give him bail in a short while. But I believe that charging has solidified the Tawe movement in Western Kenya. That marks the end of Aki and Popo, the two brothers in that region.
Wakili, let me take you back a bit. The issue of Boniface Mwangi and the violation of his human rights, his illegal detention, you can call that, because he was not charged in a court of law. Is there any way he can seek redress or we can find a solution? Because this could happen again to anyone, maybe to you.
Of course, one thing is that we need to call out the Tanzanian government at the East Africa Court of Justice. You can actually maintain an action against the government because that conduct was contrary to the spirit of the treaty. And you can look at the pattern. First, deporting Martha Karua and Lynn Ngugi and Gloria Kimani, a council member of the Law Society of Kenya. Then the deportation of Chief Justice Emeritus Willie Mutunga, Alid, Hussein Alid and Hanifa. These are champions of human rights, deporting them without allowing them access into the country. Then the arrest and detention of Boniface. So it shows you that in that period, the Tanzanian government was acting in a manner that they were showing hostility to Kenyans going into Tanzania. Purposely, for those who they perceive to hold certain political views that they are not comfortable with. But the free movement of people across the borders of the partner nations does not presuppose that that free movement should only be enjoyed by those who hold the same views as the political establishments in the respective countries. No. That free movement of people and goods applies to all citizens of the partner states, irrespective of their political views. And the Tanzanian authorities need to understand that. It is not only their praise singers who should enjoy the free movement of people. It is any citizen of the community has a right to enjoy the provisions of the treaty that allows for free movement of people.
What do you think? Is it advisable maybe to stretch and take action at the East Africa Court of Justice, as you say, or we can let this person say, let's see how it goes?
No. There's what we call eternal vigilance. When you see infractions of the law, it is not safe to say that you ignore it, accept and move on. It's accepting and move on that breeds impunity. We must at all times always call those who occupy positions of authority to account, because power, when it is not checked, tends to be abused. And if you don't do it this time, then the next time they will do it to another person. Then it becomes the norm, ultimately undermining the very purpose why we had that treaty in the first place. So the organs of the community must be moved to issue appropriate orders and directions on the conduct of the Tanzanian state in regard to the free movement of Kenyans who came from Kenya and wanted to access Tanzania. And if that was indeed contrary to the treaty. Because as it is, the people are being deported. There's nothing they've done. There's no aviation offense they had committed. There are no drugs they had in their possession. They are purely just walked into Tanzania, but they were told, no, you cannot stay. For Boniface Mwangi, who was detained, why was he being detained? Why was he legally being held? So those are the things that we are saying should be called to order. The East Africa Court of Justice needs to render itself on these questions.
We have seen comments from the political class saying that Kenyans we are exporting our bad manners to our neighboring countries. We have seen Martha Karua, advocate of the High Court of Kenya, going to Uganda to represent Kiza Besige, who was a friend who had come actually to attend her event. We are also seeing Kenyans trying to move to other countries to help other political leaders or activists in problems. Do you think, as the political class are saying, we're exporting our bad manners? Is this bad manners?
What is the bad manners? I mean, applying the rule of law, by no stretch of imagination can that be bad manners. Because these acts are purely acts about the rule of law. In fact, the only bad manners we have is the retrogressive regime, the killings of our young people, the key abductions of our young people, the corruption, the failed governance system, the collapsing economy, the unsustainable debts, the illegal debts that the Kenya government has been taking. Those are the bad manners that exist in Kenya. And the people who are responsible for exporting them to the rest of the world are the same legacy politicians. What the people who went to Tanzania or even Martha going to Uganda are exporting are the good manners of Kenyans, because it's about defending what is right and insisting on the rule of law. So how can that qualify to be bad manners by any stretch of imagination? Kenyans are actually just but a shining beacon of light to the rest of the community, that indeed we have a duty and a responsibility to hold governments to account, and we must challenge them when they are engaging in excess acts.
Kenya right now is becoming almost isolated in the region in terms of democratic practices. We are seeing quite a few challenges in Uganda. There's quite a few challenges in Tanzania. Not actually a few, big challenges in Tanzania, Uganda. Ethiopia is not a free country as well. Somalia is obviously a different case. The DRC, Rwanda, same case. Burundi. Do you think by these other countries trying to muzzle free speech, trying to not to have democracy, like practice freely, could affect, or such practices could even come back to Kenya?
You know, Kenyans have crossed the Rubicon, at least as we've gotten our political rights. Those countries that you mentioned across the region, they are still struggling with their political rights. Tanzania, they are still being ruled by the Independence Party that fought for the independence back in the 1960s. Uganda is still being led by NRM. That was a guerrilla movement that took over power by the gun. So if you go to Ethiopia, they've had their local issues around political rights. But Kenyans here, we have a promise of elections every 4 years now, as per our constitution. And we are no longer agitating for the right to speak, the right to vote, the right to contest, the right to belong to a political party. We are agitating now for economic equity, economic equality. We want a just society on the economic front, not on the political front, because the political rights are secured. It is just now the economic rights, making sure that this system works for everybody, not just a few. As we've moved from political, we are on the economic. And normally once people have acquired their political rights, you can never take it back. You can never take it away. We were there in the 1980s and 1990s. With the advent of our constitution, yes, of our constitution 2010, the fight for those rights was solidified. And they were solidly put in the constitution and enacted as the governing law. So our political rights were done with. They are secured. We are now on the second level, economic liberation. That is what we are fighting for. Those countries are not fighting for economics. They are still agitating for political rights. Even the right of a political party just to exist, to freely campaign, to freely engage with its members across the country. Tanzania, right now, Chadema has been banned. And they have an election coming up in October. Yet the main opposition party is banned. The leader of that political party, he has been detained. He's going through a very outrageous trial process in the courts. Uganda, Kizza Besigye, who was one of the major opposition players, has been illegally detained now for over 6 months contrary to their own laws. Kenyans were past that. You will not witness that in Kenya. But Kasongo may try, but he cannot succeed because we've secured these political rights in our constitution and in our practice. So the agitation now is on a different level. It's about economic liberation. How can this economy make sense to me? Not just to the legacy politicians.
Talking about economic liberation, Wakili, in the last, I think, month or so, or 2 months, Kenyans have been coining two terms. Actually, two phrases, or let me say 2 words. One is one term, meaning one term. And it has been corrupted to be spelled differently, like one term. Secondly, there are others like pro-President Ruto government who have been saying 2 term. They're calling for a 2 term for President William Ruto. Others are definitely saying President William Ruto is going for a 1 term. As it stands right now, is there any way, just if we look at it differently, hypothetically, that with what William Ruto is trying to do, President William Ruto, like what you said, launching the affordable housing, you call it an affordable housing, could salvage his political career?
The economy is getting worse by the day. The state of our economy this year is worse than it was last year. And there's still a promise that next year it will be worse than it is this year. So the Kenyan people and William Ruto, their journey is done. There's nothing he can do. We've reached a point where even if William Ruto was to give every Kenyan a bag of gold to take to their own homes, they've defined the character and they've decided we are done with you. Because he has failed on the main matrix. So the main matrix was about the economic liberation. Kenyans want to see a country that works for them, an economy that works for them. But what they've witnessed is a lost opportunity. And they have branded William Ruto and they are done with him. There's nothing he can do to reclaim back the ground. So those who say 2 terms, it's right within their rights to say it and to wish that it happens. But I do not see any magic. It will take a miracle for William Ruto to secure a second term. He cannot. In fact, where he sits, his main issue is not even to get a second term, I believe. His main issue is to finish this term. Because look at the numbers that came out when our Gen Z led us to demonstrate. The mobilization for those numbers and across the entire country and the participation was in numbers that have never been seen in the history of the earth in Kenya. People came out with the numbers that no politician has ever mobilized Kenyans to those sites. And you've never witnessed Kenyans uniting on an issue that touches on all of them, irrespective of their tribes. And Kenyans coming out without considering their tribes, their social status, their level of education, to all demand for a society that works for them. And they had said the finance bill, which was but a trigger, was promising them economic pain and they had to reject it. And they achieved the mission of that revolution, which was to reject the finance bill 2024. That mission was achieved. And I do believe that that same political force is going to determine the future of the nation. And they've already made a decision. It is not William Ruto. So he's a one-timer, in my view. There's nothing he can do. There's no game he can play. There's no rigging he can rig.
Talking about that, Wakili, people have been saying it is, and I will take your ideology for that. It is for the oppositions to lose, but as it stands, the opposition is not formidable as well. There is no outright plan. There is no outright candidate. There is no outright roadmap. Do you think what blunders could the opposition make that would make Ruto a two-term?
The mistake you're making, you're analyzing the opposition in the old lenses. They've never had the most effective opposition in Kenya like we have today. Because you are insisting on looking at opposition in terms of the legacy politicians who hold political parties. The opposition today is not those politicals. The opposition is the people of Kenya. And the people of Kenya are the ones who are now chaperoning governance and determining the future. So don't look at opposition and look at, you want to look at the legacy politicians, which political party, who is the big honcho behind that political party, what are people saying? No. That is legacy politics. That is the old that was rejected on the 25th of June. The opposition now is living in everybody's home. Every Kenyan, remember, when that same opposition stood up against Ruto and the members of parliament, they said, we are leaderless, we are partyless, but it was an opposition voice. And they managed to achieve the objective of the revolution. They delivered. So don't try to look for opposition in the legacy politicians. The effective opposition is in everybody's home, in every Kenyan's heart, who are rejecting legacy politics. And they are demanding for a new Kenya. Now, in that space, what will happen? Some people say that, oh, the opposition is not united. The opposition is the most united. What is not united? There is no unity in leaders, some legacy politicians, who also express a desire to assume office. Even if they are tonight, are they representing the masses of Kenyans? Because if you ask yourself, the opposition that led us to where we are today were the demonstrators of June 25th. Where was Gachagua during that demonstration?
He was in government. Actually.
Where was Matiang'i during that demonstration? Where was Kalonzo? Yeah. The only person who at least you can say to an extent was even associated was Jimmy Wanjigi, who was raided allegedly for sponsoring the demonstration. So they were not united to cause the June 25th. But June 25th succeeded nevertheless to achieve its objectives. So you don't need the same legacy politicians to unite to remove William Ruto. Even if we went back to the legacy politics, how the legacy politicians vote, even if those legacy politicians don't unite, William Ruto will still lose. Because even in terms of tribal voting, if that is what the parameter, which I believe is not, the split opposition legacy politicians, each running in their region, simply locks William Ruto out of those regions. So where will he get the winning vote? And yet he needs 50% plus one. Because Matiang'i running, for example, all the Kisii votes will go to Matiang'i, not to Ruto, if you're using legacy politics. So Osoro and the 300,000 votes that William got in Kisii will all disappear. It will all go to Matiang'i. So who loses? It is William Ruto who loses. Same as Kalonzo, same as Wamunyoro. So everybody who runs as a tribalist locks their tribe. So where will you get this vote? But that is if you're using legacy politicians' lenses. I believe that Kenyans are not going to vote along tribes. Kenyans are now voting on an issue. Who has the promise of a freer and a better economy that works for all Kenyans? That is the challenge that we're going to have in the next election.
People are asking themselves, right now we are focusing too much on, say, anti-Ruto rhetoric, other than just coming up with a plan and say, these are our policies, this is how I'm going to change the economy, this is how I'm going to bring in good governance, this is how I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 things. How can we change our plan, or how can the people who are craving for a new leadership change the plan without even having a leader, having someone who can give direction?
It is now upon Kenyans to start now looking at what everybody stands for. What is everybody articulating as their solutions to the problem? Because we are all agreed on the problem. The problem is William Ruto's and failed economic policies. But within even alternative voices that are emerging, there are people who are discussing solutions to the problem. Jimmy Wanjigi, for example, has been very clear from the beginning. Our problem is debt. The problem is debt. You are paying an average of 70 shillings out of every Kenyan shillings you collect from tax revenue for debt. And this debt is largely legal. Somebody is telling you, we have a debt portfolio of 11 trillion. Tell me those projects in Kenya that are worth 11 trillion. Because our laws provide that you only borrow for development. So if somebody is claiming that we've borrowed 11 trillion, this country will be like Singapore for real. Where are those projects worth 11 trillion? I always give the example of Thika Road here. We can all see it. That project was worth 30 billion. We are now talking of 11 trillion. Just put it in perspective, yeah. So him is very clear, I'm not going to pay illegal debt. If somebody took loans in the names of Kenyans, but did not follow the laws of Kenya, I will not pay it. And once you remove the debt burden off the shoulders of Kenyans, what does it mean? It means that the money you are paying as debt, you are going to save it. So you can even give people tax reliefs, reduce VAT on fuel from 16% to 5%. You are able to say to fund your entire education sector from primary to university, 100% free. Because it will take you around 400 billion. You are going to provide free healthcare to every Kenyan. Free to every Kenyan. Because if you look at what they are projecting as the cost of running SHA 160 billion, so you'll have saved 2 trillion that you're paying as debt. You have now 160 billion you can put in the health sector. That's what SHA was contributing. So you can do so much more. If you are building thicker roads, education of roads, thicker road I told you was 30 billion, maybe now it will be 50 billion. How many of those thicker roads can you build?
Complete.
So you can do a lot. Yeah, Nairobi, Mombasa, not Nairobi to Busia Highway, make it 8 lanes.
They are saying we had a concession from China.
You can build it without borrowing. So those loans are illegal loans. Why take it? You have 2 trillion in a year that you've saved from paying, which was illegal debt. That road from Mombasa to Malaba or even Busia will cost you approximately 300 billion. You have 2 trillion. You can build the national lottery. Own funding.
Wakili, your party and your party leader has been a proponent of this not paying this debt. We already have a debt, we know. Legally, do you think if we abscond and say we are not paying these debts, for example, come 2027 and Jimmy Wanjigi is the president of the Republic of Kenya and he says I'm not paying these debts, legally, how would that what situation would that put Kenya into?
Since you said legally, the answer is very simple. Look at the laws of Kenya. If somebody took a loan in the name of Kenya, didn't apply it to any project, didn't get parliamentary approval, legally, is that loan taken by the people of Kenya? It is not. In fact, some of them, like Eurobond 1, he took $2 billion US. $1 billion we can trace came to Kenya. Yeah. $1 billion went to a private account in Qatar. So you are telling me legally Kenyans should pay for that loan? No. Legally, Kenyans should only pay for that which came into their coffers, that was taken following their laws. That which did not follow their law is odious. And the banks that were issuing this money, there's what we call buyer beware. The banks must do their own due diligence. By the time you are lending money to Kenya government, you must have checked what does the law say about borrowing by Kenya government. What do their laws say? If you find that their laws don't allow for the kind of laws they're asking, you tell them no. So it's a risk the banks have taken. That's their problem. In Mozambique, the courts declared certain tuna bond, $2 billion US. Odious. And they didn't pay. In fact, Credit Suisse ended up paying them what had been paid towards part settlement of that loan. That is what we'll also do. If it is legal, we pay. But if somebody took money in the name of Kenyans and took it to his private account, I'm sorry, he will not pay.
Okay, what from international standards of and borrowing and from the international standards of borrowing, which laws do apply? Is it the borrowing country or the lending country or the country that where the lending organization is registered?
No. It starts from, even if it is national, both laws apply. You cannot say that it's exclusive international law minus local law. By the time somebody walks into a bank, locally or internationally, the first thing the bank asks is your authority. What gives you the authority to come and borrow?
Who are you?
Who are you? So you walk into the bank and you say, I'm the government of Kenya. Yes. Where is your authority to borrow money from us? It is your law. You are a republic? Yes. So you have a parliament? Yes. You have laws? Yes. You have a constitution? Yes. The banks will go and look at your constitution. What does it say about borrowing? It will go and look for your acts of parliament. What does it say about borrowing? That's the due diligence. Okay, now you want to borrow, you've seen your laws say you must get parliamentary approval. You want to borrow this much, where is the parliamentary approval from your parliament allowing you to borrow? Where is the project that you are supposed to fund? Because your laws say you only borrow for a project. Give us the prospectus. Which projects are being funded? But you can't just walk in at it because I'm president of Kenya, I want to borrow $2 billion US, and the bank just gives you, you walk away with. Then that bank is not a borrower, that bank is a complicit criminal. Yeah, because you are a republic, you are not a monarch. This is not a monarchy, where the king's word is law. You are a republic, so you are governed by the rule of law. And the law is in the constitution and acts of parliament. So that is what settles it. So those banks are treated as criminals. And that's what happened in Mozambique. Credit Suisse paid money and it even collapsed. Some of their executives were arrested in Europe. Because how do you give loans? You're giving a country a loan and you're disputing money to people's private accounts. Then you ask the Mozambicans to pay. Yeah. This is not a sovereign debt. That's a criminal enterprise. That's what Safina we believe in. We will not pay. And we are very clear.
Wakili, the finance bill is coming up. Kenyans have been very curious because of the happenings of 2024. Have you gotten a glimpse of any of the documents, and do you see that currently the William RUTO administration said it had brought in experts, that now this time things are going to be smooth? things are going to be fine.
Have you not seen now that finance bill is being hidden like weed? It's not liberally shared like it was shared last time. Yeah, why? But they've increased taxes, levies and charges in the finance bill. This coming financial year, the debt payments will be 2.2 trillion. This ending financial year, their collections, what they collected from tax revenue, projections is not going to get past 2.3 trillion. In other words,
We're only remaining with like 100
billion. In other words, if they don't increase their taxes,
how will they fund that?
then the system will not function next year. So the finance bill has increased their taxes, charges and levies. A broke government raids your pocket and makes you bankrupt. But they're trying to hide it. They don't want you to see. You're going to see there's something they call a sugar levy, which is going to be levied on transporters of sugarcane. Who will pay the ultimate price of that sugar levy? It's the consumer. Not the farmer, it's the consumer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's levied on the farmer, but ultimately it affects the pricing of the sugar. So everything is going to be increased. There was even a proposal to increase VAT on certain items which are not vatable, have been zero rated. They are now being made vatable. Certain basics, items that people use.
I read somewhere that the government currently is conducting mostly of a PR exercise. We saw the Treasury CS issued a notice and said, please Kenyans, can you help me contribute to make the statement for the financial year 2025-2026, come make your contribution. Do you think this is maybe they are trying to, they learned from their mistake?
No, that is just PR exercise. If they want to have a serious conversation with Kenyans, they should do a public forum and start sharing from what is the state of our economy. What do we earn as a country? How is it paid out? Yeah, what do we earn? What do we receive? What's our income? Then where's our budget? How do we spend it? Tell Kenyans these are the debts that you have. And give us the pockets of debt. And tell us what projects they applied to. Because Kenyans will ask questions. But somebody just seeing they have paid 2 trillion shillings in 1 year to debt finance. To finance what? What was it? What did that debt to finance? So you cannot have you cannot send comments to the CS in isolation. He must first give you the full picture of the state of the economy. Tell you this is our debt portfolio and these are all the pockets of debts that we have. And these are the projects the debt financed. And these are our revenue streams. This is what we're earning. Help us now develop a policy and now we are going to come up with a budget. Do you know even last year, this financial year, you know there is even no budget that was read. That was just a statement that was read in Parliament. There's no budget. Have you seen the Kenyan budget? Ask any Kenyan here to show you the budget. They have not seen it.
It's hidden.
Because as per our Constitution, Article 220, a budget must have estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure. This is our revenue estimates. What we are earning. And this is how we propose to spend it. You put them together and you achieve what is called a balanced budget. But these characters just show you estimates of expenditure. They will just show you estimates of expenditure. They've never published to Kenyans an estimates of revenue and expenditure together, as envisaged in Article 220.
Can such documents be available to the public?
It should be, because those are public documents, and the Constitution demands for the development of that document. So this financial year, we should ask them, readers, give us the estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure. Don't give us your statement you are reading in Parliament. That's just a statement you are reading. A policy statement you are reading. But give us Article 220, estimates of revenue, estimates of expenditure. He will not give you. Why? Because that is where they start going to borrow illegally. Because if they told you are going to borrow this much, 200 billion, to fund this particular project.
It'll be outcry.
No, you will know. So the next time they try to borrow beyond the 200 billion, which was in the budget, people will make noise. So they never give you the estimates of revenue. They leave that part of revenue blank. It's not shared to Kenyan people.
Parliament is a, say, an accomplice in all this.
The
Because,
most
for
useless.
example, the Public Accounts Committee is supposed to check on this.
The most useless office in this country today is called the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. They even have a budget a committee that is supposed to be in charge of public debt. They don't even know what the state of public debt in Kenya is today. If you ask the chairman of that committee to tell you, at least give you a list of all our debts in the last 10 years and all the repayments made in the last 10 years, he cannot give you. It's the most useless organ. If Kenyans are relying on that parliament and to oversight the executive, tough luck.
How
They're
can we
incompetent.
remedy this?
We have to vote all of them out. Fagia water. You cannot continue with these legacy politicians. They are the ones who caused all this mess. Because if parliament was functioning, we will not be in this mess. They are there for themselves. But if anybody thinks they can get life or Kenyans can get better with the same legacy politicians, continue. There's no chance.
Wakili, you're taking me back to the problem that is that currently affects Kenya, which is leadership and the political class, the elite political class. You have said the solution is to fagia water, but just clean up parliament, clean up the leadership from top to bottom. As a Willis and as a member of Safina Party, what do you think is the roadmap for Kenya to get new leadership, to just do a revamp, or we do a restart, a reset to Kenya?
We have to start having a conversation that focuses on the people. And the Kenyan people also need to identify leaders who mean what they say. And we have to test everybody's ideas before they're elected. Yeah, when somebody tells you I'm going to bottom up, what is bottom up? You must test it, have a debate. When somebody comes to a political rally and is doing sound bites, TB Mtialala, that can be the basis of election. You must ask, test ideas, ask questions. Are they viable? Are they feasible? Yeah. And I do believe these Kenyans are now more enlightened. They are not the Kenyans of before. These ones are now more enlightened. They have phones, smartphones on their hands. They can get information, verify information. They have AI that can help them to understand tough concepts. They are now more enlightened. And that is now what we need to bring into our leadership. The same scrutiny by which you interrogate or interview anybody who wants to work for you or to provide service to you. That's the same one that we must now apply to the political class. But the legacy politicians, fagia what? And we are 50 million, so we are not lack of choices. The legacy politicians, in totality, they are not even more than 5,000, all of them. Even if you kicked all of them out, you still have to choose over 50 million Kenyans to choose from. Yeah. So there's nothing you're lacking. They're only 5,000.
Going forward for your party and for the people for the ideas that you have, do you think I have also obviously seen you and your party leader trying to engage the wananchi, attending grassroots debates, obviously talking to us in the media. Do you think it is late to maybe start moving around the country to educate people, like doing like a real campaign? We're already seeing the president is on top of cars. We are seeing the deputy president currently has an empowerment plan where he's dishing out money.
That's legacy politicians, don't worry. That's what they know. We are not going to campaign the way the legacy politicians do. Yeah. When William RUTO was insulting young people here on top of cars, telling members of parliament, pitisha raka. It was in June. Pitisha raka. Kesho asubuhi mimi naweka sahihi. There was nobody equally campaigning on the other side, telling him he's wrong. But there was no other person on top of vehicles. It was him and his legacy politicians on top of vehicles running all over the country like madmen. When the crunch time came,
things flipped.
So why are you worried about? I don't need to use their tactics. We can use our tactics. So You don't give them. Why are you taking us into on top of motor vehicles? That's playing in the arena. Safina party is with the people, and the people know where the forums they meet. And these legacy politicians don't even know about these forums where people are meeting today. The online platforms people are meeting and having conversation. Yeah. People will not. How many times William Ruto was here in Nairobi on top of vehicles everywhere? He went to almost all the constituencies. Do you think it changed even a single vote to support him? He didn't. In fact, he was advertising to Nairobians how bad he is. So you want us to go the same trajectory when we know where Kenyans are now having a governance conversation. It's not on top of vehicles. It's on their hands. They work with it every day.
People asking themselves, for example, my grandmother in my rural home is not aware about some of these issues that we are talking about. Only, for example, maybe the ones who are connected to technology are the ones who are aware about how things are in the situations. And those in the ground, or those, for example, in the rural areas, could influence. How do we get them to know the things we are talking about?
Don't underestimate the penetration of internet in the country and the level of interaction that people are having. Even your grandmother has access to a young man who is in his early 20s or in his teenage years. Yeah. And your grandmother understands the economy because she knows when she sends somebody to the shop
to buy sugar.
Yesterday, the price of sugar was 120. Today, he goes send somebody, it is 130. She knows. And you have penetration of vernacular stations here. Your grandmother has access to a radio somewhere, or someone has access to a radio. They all interact. These are not the times when Kenyans had no access to information. The level of information penetration in the country is very high. And Kenyans are able to discern. That's why branding legacy politicians is the easiest thing. The information easily flows across the country. Even just people who are going to watch us on this channel, they have families. They are not bots. And they share information with their family members. And they form ideas, they form opinions. So we are now operating on a different trajectory. If you go to some countries across the globe that are more advanced technologically, if you went to London, for example, on election day, you don't even know it's an election day.
Business as usual.
And you'll see the numbers, huge numbers of people who have voted. Why? Where are the campaigns? You never notice people going to campaign. The campaigns on the TV, on their phones. When they go to campaign, they meet in town halls. Very few people go to the town halls to do the campaign. That is where Kenya is heading to. And we must accept and align with that new emerging order. That we will have small conversations in terms of analyzing and choosing our leaders. Not what the legacy politicians have fed us over these years. Because it's that legacy politics, that system that sustained legacy politics, is the system that we are bringing down and creating the Fourth Republic, a new Kenya. A new Kenya where the voice of the people is the voice of God. And everything is done to the best interest of the people.
Wow, what a sobering way to end it. I think Kenyans should try to digest that things have changed. It's not about what other leaders, legacy politicians say, watu wa Nairobi ndio wanaandamana. Watu wa Nairobi ndio Gen Z. So it's a national problem. Thank you very much, Wakili, for your time.
Thank you very much
for having us.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.